This is a fan-generated show. If you would like to support us, please go to jamieglazov.com and also don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And make sure to order Jamie Glazov's new critically acclaimed jihadist psychopath. How he is charming, seducing, and devouring us. All your support is greatly appreciated.
Good evening. On this Greenfield moment of the Glazov Gang, we're going to take on the question of who's the boss? Actually, we're going to take on a slightly different question, but it begins with who's the boss, which is a classic 1980s sitcom. I don't know if the actual sitcom ever answered the titular question of who the boss is, but Alyssa Milano, one of the former stars of the show who helped kickstart the Me Too movement, did help answer that question when asked if she believed the woman, the Senate staffer named Tara Reid, who came forward and accused Joe Biden of having sexually assaulted her. Milano did not believe her. And this is, of course, the same woman, the same activist who had been going around saying, believe all women. Well, and this is the title of this episode, Believe All Women Unless They Accuse Joe Biden. Because, well, believing women who accuse Joe Biden would be very unhelpful because it would lose Joe Biden and the Democrats the election. And that's who the boss actually is. At the moment, Joe Biden is the boss, but of course the real boss is the ideology. And you can't possibly believe all women if it leads to bad consequences. Now, the Democrats already did that. They did that with Al Franken. They believed the 7 or 8 women who came forward and accused Al Franken of groping them. There was a plethora of women. They included a feminist choir member. But of course, once Al Franken stepped down, there were regrets. There were big regrets. George Soros was most unhappy. He announced that he would not support Senator Kirsten Gillibrand because she called for Al Franken to step down. A number of other big donors indicated they would never support Gillibrand. Not that Gillibrand had a shot to begin with, or that she was remotely a good candidate, and she had her own sexual assault, sexual harassment incident within her own office that her own office very predictably covered up. But the point, of course, was that you're not remotely supposed to believe women if the consequences are negative for Democrats. So, of course, the New York Times went in, they investigated. They went over Tara Reid's story with a fine-tooth comb. That's the same fine-tooth comb that they kept locked in their bottom drawer during the Kavanaugh case so that they wouldn't have to investigate the accusations of otherwise incredibly credible accusers like Deborah Ramirez. So, this time around, the fine-tooth comb came out and all the detailed journalistic reporting and the introduction of doubt. And of course, during this, the New York Times, those 2 writers claimed that there was just no pattern of sexual misconduct by Joe Biden. None to see here. There's no pattern of sexual misconduct from the guy who married his second wife because he saw a picture on bus shelter ad and tracked her down while she was a college senior and got her unlisted phone number and eventually married her. I mean, that's an incredible love story right there, by the way. Not at all creepy. Not at all creepy in the least. Neither is his biting his wife's finger on the campaign trail or sniffing women's hair or kissing them inappropriately and all that stuff. And, the story did mention that, aside from all his kissing and groping and sniffing and all the inappropriate touching, there's no pattern of sexual misconduct. I mean, aside from his swimming nude in a swimming pool in front of female Secret Service agents, there is no pattern of misconduct. Aside from the exhibitionism, the groping, the sniffing, the inappropriate kissing, there is no pattern of sexual misconduct with Joe Biden. You can't find a pattern. Now, this paragraph was a little bit awkward, so the New York Times deleted that. And the editor of the New York Times, Dean Backel, was asked, why did you delete that paragraph? And he replied, the campaign found it awkward. The campaign probably found it awkward and actually came forward and said, we deleted this because the campaign found it awkward. I mean, he should have found it awkward to even admit that he was deleting something because the Biden campaign found it awkward. But who's the boss? The boss is Joe Biden, or more accurately, because Joe Biden doesn't have a brain cell in his finely landscaped toupeed head. It's the Democrat Party and it's the left, which of course means that believe all women really means believe all women unless they accuse Joe Biden. It means believe all women as long as they're accusing Republicans. Then you can totally believe them. Or believe all women as long as they're accusing people at the moment we don't like or don't have that much use for, or people who've already been thoroughly discredited. Otherwise, well, no. I mean, we shouldn't believe all women if they accuse Joe Biden or Al Franken or anybody who's on our side. I mean, that's what the Me Too movement at this point has come down to. It's not the whole we're against sexual harassment, that's right back to the 90s game where we totally are not going to believe any of Bill Clinton's accusers, no matter how credible they are. Instead, we're going to set out to destroy them. We're going to destroy them because they're politically inconvenient, because we want Bill Clinton to be president. On the other hand, if a woman comes forward, or if we bring her forward and she accuses Justice Thomas of something, we're going to hold Senate hearings overseen by, among other people, a guy named Joe Biden. We're going to hold Senate hearings. We're going to take this very, very, very seriously. And we're talking about Democrat Senate that included the likes of Ted Kennedy, who actually killed a woman, and a number of other Ted Kennedy's pals who were known to, shall we say, mistreat women a little bit. The whole waitress sandwich story comes to mind. So there's a little bit of a double standard. If you just peer into it, if you examine it very closely, you might be able to find a smidgen of a double standard here. The double standard, obviously, is that we've gone right back to the 90s, where sexual harassment accusations were just a tool of political warfare. And that's exactly where the Me Too movement has gone right back to. And Alyssa Milano, of course, heralded that final transition, the train pulling into the station of sexual harassment allegations, sexual assault allegations only matter if they help elect Democrats. We should absolutely ignore them if they will politically hurt Democrats. The whole idea of believing all women, of course, was pernicious nonsense. You don't believe all women, you don't believe all men, you don't believe anybody. You don't believe all space aliens. You don't believe all transgender people. You don't believe all Eskimos. You don't believe all anybody, because believing all anybody is stupid. The basis of human nature is that people can occasionally be reliable, but we should test facts, especially if we have two people and their word is in conflict. So that's the basis of jurisprudence. It's the basis of really the entire modern conception of how we decide things. We don't throw people in the water and see if they float or not. If they float, they're a witch. We don't throw people in the water and, well, if they float, they're probably a sexual harasser. It doesn't work that way. Except the Me Too movement made it work that way. It insisted that all women should absolutely believe, because no woman would ever lie about anything. Well, people lie about things. Men lie about things. Women lie about things. Even poodles lie about things. I mean, sometimes you come home and the poodle looks at you with very innocent expression, but there's a broken vase on the floor. I don't actually have a poodle. This is just a random example. The point being, you shouldn't believe men, women, or poodles. You don't believe all of anybody. What you believe are the facts. What you believe is the truth. And of course, the Me Too movement threw the truth out the window. And when you throw the truth out the window, you've just got a crusade. And at some point, the crusade concludes its tawdry ending, where what really matters to the crusade is serving its own political interests. And the political interests of the Me Too movement are now all about electing Joe Biden, a guy who, as I may have mentioned, is on video, and there are photos of him groping every conceivable combination, ages, I'd say genders in some cases, because some of those photos are really rather troubling. And but there's no pattern of sexual misconduct, according to two New York Times reporters, one of whom had written a story about which discussed more Biden accusers coming forward. But of course, this was before Biden got into the race. And another of the New York Times reporters, there were two on this. Of course, they chose both women to do this. Had previously discussed the accusations against Joe Biden and said that, he needs to get with the times. This was before Joe Biden came into the race. And back then they were thinking, there should be a more progressive candidate, maybe a black woman, Kamala Harris, will be the next nominee. But now that Joe Biden is officially the nominee, now that the only thing that could stop Joe Biden from getting the Democrat nomination would be a stroke of lightning, or, alligator coming out of the sewer to eat him, or possibly, natural courses taking their way with him. They have to defend him. They have to get behind Joe Biden. And that means forgetting about the Me Too movement, forgetting about believe all women. It means protecting him no matter what kind of dirty stuff comes out. And of course, at the same time, attacking President Trump, attacking any other Republican that they can with the same feigned outrage. Now, all those same paid Soros protesters who were screaming, they were screaming behind the doors at the Senate hearings for Kavanaugh. They were screaming their lungs out. They're pretty silent now because Joe Biden is their guy. Even if maybe they'd like somebody more left-wing like Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden is their guy, which means they have to stick behind him. And the answer to who's the boss? The boss is Joe Biden. The boss is ideology. The boss is the Democrat Party. Thank you for listening. This has been another Daniel Greenfield moment on the Glazov Gang. If you enjoyed this Daniel Greenfield moment, feel free to subscribe to the Glazov Gang's YouTube channel, help participate in their fundraisers, and continue to support the great work that Jamie and Annie continue to do. Thank you very much and have a good night.